How many times have you leveled through World of Warcraft's vast lands? Perhaps you're a rogue traversing the grounds of Stranglethorn Vale, killing 10 young panthers to prove your mastery of the hunt. Or you're a seasoned war veteran, moving strategically through the lands of Northrend to combat the Lich King's forces. There's tons of different zones, ways, and opportunities for one to find themselves immersed in, but sometimes the leveling process can become a bit repetitive, especially if you're like me and have been playing the game for 16 years at this point. And so exists this show to give you potentially new ideas on how to challenge yourself in the lands of Azeroth once more. This is LevelMania. Welcome to the show. I am your host Camixs, and today we'll be taking a look at the rules for the upcoming challenge for Shadowlands leveling. In this experiment, we've gathered 12 different competitors to go head to head. Their goal is simple, to get to level 60 before the other competitors. But if it were that easy, then we wouldn't be making a show about it, now would we? It seems only fitting that we find ways to make the leveling process a bit more challenging, and perhaps rewarding depending on those who get to the spot first. But before we begin, let's introduce our competitors, shall we? Coming in first on our list, we have Groltal the Orc, representing the warrior class within the blades of Durotar. His axe swings as true as the might of the people, and he's bound to ring the supreme of our champion of the LevelMania contest. Second, we have Stalwrath the Dwarf. Representing the hunter class from Dunrow, Stalwrath beckons the call of challenge in order to show off the prowess and natural overpowered nature of the hunters. Third on our list, we have Merienda the Blood Elf. She has chosen the mage class to manipulate her foes and claw to the top of the list, and eventually overtake the seat of power for herself in the race that she supports. Fourth on the ranks, Mai Lang the Pandaren has appeared. Her daggers will swing true with overtly powerful poisonings that will cripple and weaken her foes until they can no longer stand. She has chosen to represent the rogues of her race. We then travel to the lands of Mulgore to meet Longhail, a Tauren priest wrapped in the clothing of light and shadow. Both make for a powerful ally to have, and the ever-faithful individual will strive to believe and trust his hand to the guide of victory. For our sixth member of the ring, we have Malborn, an undead Forsaken who not only wields the power of the sickly touch of the grave, but also holds an essential force over demonic energies, sending afflictions to those who would dare cross the Warlock's path. On the opposite end of the spectrum, we have Inara. This Draenei has chosen to devoutly seek out the light's blessing and make it her own in the form of a weapon. She will not stand for failure, for if she were to do so, she would shame the very faith she champions. Coming home from the former lands of Gilneas, we have Vana the Druid. He walks with great strides, seeking to mend the wounds of a world torn asunder, but this hasn't stopped him from competing to test his mettle with moon and sun spellcasting. Second to last, we have Kazax the Goblin, hailing from the lands of Kazan. Kazax has chosen to walk the way of a powerful elemental lord. His fingers will glow of fire and lightning as he obliterates his foes into nothing but ash. The shaman is not to be trifled with. And finally, using a fist of fury and a touch of death, we have Gruulstak. This troll from the Isles will use his mastery of hand-to-hand combat in order to close the throats of the unbelievers in his revelry. A monk's single hit can be the most devastating, if not careful. Now you might be thinking, that was only 10 competitors. Where are the other two? Unfortunately for them, Demon Hunters and Death Knights both start at level 8, and so until a certain level for the others have been procured, they are not allowed in this competition. What we can tell you is that their names are Mandy and Yundel, and they're eager to take a spot in the games and fight for a chance to prove their mastery in the craft. Now with that out of the way, let's talk about the challenge itself, specifically the rules. This first challenge will revolve primarily around what is simply called the Shock, and it goes something like this. The Shock is an unpredictable force that can stop the competitors in its wake clean. With one failed block of the Shock, an individual's opportunity to progress forward for that day will be found wanting, and therefore discarded in the pile until they can arise once more. The Shock takes no prisoners, manifesting to the very core of the competitor, viciously tearing the spirit from its physical prowess until the walk of shame must be made back from the graveyards. Now, that does sound like an interesting concept for a leveling challenge, but how exactly does it work? Well, we've been given an extensive guide on how all competitors are to play this game proper. Firstly, when a competitor is to start the day, they will roll based on their level. An example of this being if a competitor is level 27, then they will roll out of 27 themselves. This gives off the air of chance, as dependent on their role, it could be fortuitous, devastating, or mundane. Let's start off with the fortuitous. For a competitor to roll their fortuitous number would be a significant chance to run away with the competition, for it is noted that should they roll their maximum, they will be able to roll again with a 1 through 5 roll in order to potentially gain more levels right away. This ensures their protection from the looming threat of the shock and allows them to move unharmed. An example of this is if a player is level 7 and rolls a 27, then they get a 1 through 5 in order to get them a guaranteed lever to whatever they rolled. So if a player then rolls a 4, they are guaranteed safe passage to level 31. The next roll that can occur is called the mundane. Simply put, if a player is able to roll equal to or above the halfway marker of their roll, then they shall be guaranteed 1 safe level to the next motion of the competition. This only protects them from the one spot to the next, as once they do move on to the next push forward, they once more have to put their hands in the fate of dice and watch the potential terror as the shock comes running towards them. An example of this is if a player is level 27 but only rolls a 16, then they are still given that 1 level to move forward because the roll, if multiplied by 2, is 32. This grants them a singular safe passage before once again having to go once more into the rolling system. Finally, we have the devastation roll. This one marks the competitor for death. Time stops around them as if frozen in place, and the only thing that they can feel is the sudden grasp of death as the shock comes to take them, shattering their mind and spirit and ripping away viciously for sport. This is ultimately how all challengers will end in one day's run, but it's up to them to prolong the inevitable as long as they can. An example of this would be if a player is level 27 but then rolls a 12. If you multiply that 12 by 2, then the outcome comes to a number of 24, not enough to protect the competitor from the shock roll. As a result, their character instantly falls on the battlefield, unable to compete again until the next episode. If you thought that was all the rules, there is one more that should be mentioned before we get to the basics. Leading the pack is a powerful feeling. The strive of victory being in your grasp is one that can be tempting, alluring even. Yet this challenge can prove to be a dangerous game, as the leader will be in constant danger. The shock craves to destroy the proud. It makes one humble, willing to bring the kings to broken husks, and nobles to beggars. As a result, the shock will prey on the leader in a mark called the shock's allure. Basically put, you may keep your leading position, but if you so much as slip up and fall into the submission of another, your character will be completely ripped to shreds, broken and battered to the point where your spirit can no longer enter the body, gone at the hands of your own pride. A prime example of this is if someone who is level 25 is leading everyone, but then on that day is surpassed by someone who is level 26, overtaking them. Then the character is deleted, and they must start over again from the beginning. Such is the fate of the prideful. Other rules have been placed for the competitors, although they are not as deadly or as dangerous. For one, everyone starts their competition at level 3, to ensure a roll can be had with failure. This could potentially help some, while hindering others to the shock's grasp. Next, there will be no dungeons or battlegrounds. The shock wants this to be a competition of skill in the open world, not one fought with others in the game. Should one enter these places, they will be struck down and forced to try again. The only exception being is if they enter a dungeon for a quest that can't be done otherwise, an example of this being a shaman's quest in Moonbrook. Thirdly, the timelines are open to the competitors, yet only one champion may go through each timeline. This is to ensure that no interference from the other players will be had. The shock wants a fair game and a fair hunt of its own prey. This means that only one person may enter each of the following zones: Outlands, Northrend, Borean Tundra, Northrend, Howling Fjord, Cataclysm, Hyjal, Cataclysm, Bashir, Pandaria, Warlord of Draenor, Legion, and Battle for Azeroth. No other person may set footholds in spots that previous fighters were in, the only exception to this rule being Shadowlands, for once you hit level 50, it is unavoidable not to walk in the same direction. Finally, Death Knights and Demon Hunters may not join the fray until leaders are at least level 5 away from their initial dominion. This means that in order to see Mandy and Yendel, whoever the leader is must have hit at least level 13 first. Besides these rules, they have pretty well free reign to play as they wish. This is the challenge of LevelMania, and we hope you'll be around to see who the final winner is of such a competition. The first episode will be out soon, so if you have made it this far, thank you so much for listening in. If this is the type of game that interests you, consider giving the channel a subscription and clicking the icon to be rang of our post. Once the first episode is out, there are plans to be non-stop releases until a champion is crowned in the great city of Orbis. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Camixs, and we shall see you on the first round of LevelMania.